We are in a time of significant change, and that's going to continue. This is probably the most change you've experienced in your life, and it is probably the least amount of change you're going to experience going forward. The pace of change won't be linear, it will be exponential and curving upward. Many leaders of organizations are trying to wrap their head around how they're going to navigate this change and how they're going to keep their organization moving forward and keeping up with their customers, their clients, their students, their constituents going forward. They might be thinking about that over the next 6 months, over the next year. Some of them might be thinking about that in terms of strategic planning. This process of becoming can be a way for us to think about how we move forward in this pace of change, looking at the past and the future, as well as our identity or the vision for the organization and our actions. Today, I want to talk about 4 components of how your organization is becoming. You've heard this term VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And it often feels that way to us, all of these things coming together at one time. Some leaders are waiting for a return to normal. I don't think that's going to happen. I think things are going to continue to increase in the pace of change and volatility. What we need to do is, rather than wait this out or fight against this pace of change, is we need to learn to work with it. And if we're going to work with this pace of change, it can actually be an opportunity. It means we do need to be adaptable and flexible and nimble while also staying clear about our purpose and why we are here. So I want to talk about this process of becoming. This emerged from my research on individuals and individual identity development. It's an empirical research project that I've been doing for the past 25 years. And this process of becoming emerged from the data from that project. That was really about research around individuals, and I think it's really useful when we think about the organizations that we're in, because organizations are made up of many different individuals. Sometimes a dozen, sometimes hundreds of thousands. And so this process of becoming that emerged, 4 pieces of it for individual development, I think we can apply to organizational development. And it's been a really useful tool as I've worked with organizations around their organizational becoming as groups of folks. This organizational model includes discovery, creating, leading, and learning. And we're going to have a chance today to talk about the what, the how, and offer a diagnostic tool so you can see where you fit in this process of becoming that you may want to consider using with your organization. When we think about the what of this becoming model, I want to show you this model and talk a little bit about each of the 4 parts. So you see the past and future, looking backward and looking forward, the left and the right. There's also the top and the bottom being our vision for the organization, and the top being our action and how we're moving toward that vision. Those are 2 pieces. And these left and right, top and bottom, make up these 4 quadrants. Let's begin in the bottom left around this quadrant of discovery. Discovery is how we look back at who we have been as an organization. This might include our past mission, vision, and values. It might be how we were founded or our founders, the history of the organization, key people in the organization, significant transitions along the way, maybe significant events, and often stories that make up who we have been as an organization. Then we move to the future and vision. This is the creating. This might be our future mission, vision, and values. It might include our strategic plan going forward over the next 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years. Our future mission, vision, values, and our strategic plan might include goals and outcomes, frameworks, or other ways of articulating our vision for the organization going forward. In our top right, we have the leading, which is our action toward this future vision. This might include an implementation plan, projects, tasks, to-do lists, timelines, point people, accountability, how we're going to be adaptable, and how we're going to keep updating our progress in these ways of moving forward and hold ourselves accountable. And then the top left is our action looking backward. So what is it that we're doing that is working or not working? This is where assessment comes into play, reflection, looking back, analysis, and this process of continuous improvement where we're constantly trying to improve what we are doing so we can do it better into the future. So that's a little bit about the what. The how is around how we figure out what this is. So we might begin by thinking about ourselves as an individual. Do I like to look backward at the past or look forward at the future? Do I prefer to think about who I am, who I have been, who I aspire to be, or do I prefer to look at my actions? What have I done? What has served me? What has not served me? And so you can think about this as an individual. And the diagnostic I'll share with you in a little bit gives you an opportunity to think about that in that way if you want to. This is often a process that I engage my coaching clients in when we're thinking about their own growth and development at work and in their life. It can also be really helpful to think about this in terms of your group in your organization. It might be the entire organization if you're a small organization. It might be a leadership team of a medium-sized organization, or the very senior leaders of a very large organization, or perhaps a team within a larger organization. By looking at how each of the team members prefers or tends to think about these aspects of becoming, you can see where you as a group are going to easily fall into and pay attention to. You can also see where you as a group might not be your preference. You might tend not to want to look back at your actions. And so that means you just need to put more attention into the assessment, the learning, the reflection to do that. You might tend to have a preference as a group for action, but not for the vision. So you don't need to put a lot of effort into coming up with the implementation plan and the project lists and the task lists. You're going to do that pretty naturally. But you might have to really work and be intentional, and maybe bring in a facilitator to help you think with the creating of vision, strategic plan, mission, vision, values going forward, because that's not something you're going to fall into. Each of these four pieces is really important and critical, so we want to do them all. None are more important than others. So wherever your preferences land, it's just good to know that's where you're going to tend to think and do, and then you might need to be more intentional about the other aspects. We don't want to make any of it wrong, but just help us see where we're naturally going to pay attention and where we might need to put some more intentionality into our attention. This can be really useful with strategic planning. I use this with strategic planning clients pretty regularly. And when we see where maybe the board is and where the staff is, then I as a facilitator know where I need to direct them or hold boundaries or really hold them accountable to doing this part of it, and where they're naturally going to flow into that as we go. All of these aspects are useful and critical and valuable, and we just need to make sure we're tending to all four aspects as we think about the organizational development moving forward. There is a diagnostic. It's free. It'll take you about 3 minutes, and you can think about the questions. There's only 20 questions. You can think about the questions in terms of your own life, if that's where your mindset is at. You can also think about them in your role at work. You might, in one organization, be a staff member or a leader. In another organization, you might be on the board of a nonprofit in your community. Feel free to think about that any way you like. The questions are pretty open-ended and broadly applicable. It will give you a quick result about where you tend to focus. Again, none of these are good, none of these are bad. All four aspects are useful and helpful. I would just pay attention to less about whether this is true, whether the results are true for you, because that can feel a little limiting. Am I this and not that? So then it can say something more about what we're not than what we are. So I wouldn't worry about that part. I would worry about, is this useful? Is it useful to think that maybe I pay attention to these more than others, and maybe I need to be more intentional about that? So I'd focus more about how it's useful over whether it is true, and not feel labeled or limited by it. But this is just one take with 20 questions, so don't take it too seriously. If you're an individual who's curious about where you tend to focus in your own becoming, you can use this diagnostic for yourself. The link is below. It's totally free. But if you're a leader of an organization, you might think about how the people in your organization do this as well. And collectively, you can start to see where you as a group are at, where you're going to naturally fall into and things are going to flow very easily, and where you might need some help putting more thought, energy, and effort, either with intentionality or structures, or maybe an outside facilitator to help you do that. If you're interested in this with your organization, whether it's a group, just to think about the next 6 months of change and upheaval and how you're going to navigate that, or maybe with your next strategic planning process, I'd love to connect with you and work with you on this. One of the things I'm really proud of is short strategic plans, 1 to 2 pages, where more people will read them and they will guide them. I'm also really proud of processes. I often hear from folks who say, I thought this was going to be miserable and awful like all the other strategic plans I've done. This was actually really great, really useful, really enjoyable. So if you're looking for a staff or board or strategic planning retreat that isn't miserable, that isn't awful, that helps you connect, helps you learn, and helps you move forward in your organization, let's connect. I love being helpful. If you think I can help your organization, let's connect. You can easily find me at keithedwards.com or at the links below. Together, let's empower better tomorrows for us all.